Welcome to Sizzle Fantasy Sports, the channel with the most sizzling hot fantasy takes and analysis, presented by your host, Gavin.
Rodgers clean pocket, throws the middle of the end zone. Devonta, touchdown, and a dagger!
How's it going, you guys? Welcome back to the SFS channel. My name is Gavin, and this is Eric, and today we've got our second NFL mock draft for you guys for the 2021 offseason. But today we're putting a bit of a spin on things from the 1.0 mock draft that we did earlier on this week. We're going to be tossing in some trades this time around, with some teams trading up to secure that franchise quarterback that they're after. But before we get into today's video, go down and give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new around here. Also, if you head over to the Patreon that is at the bottom of the screen and linked in the description, you guys can get some exclusive access to some rookie scouting profiles with some film breakdown and analysis that we'll be posting weekly, along with some other fantasy football information, which is the main focus of this channel. So, with that being said, we're not going to waste any more time. We're going to get right into the mock draft. All right, we're in the mock draft here now. This one, the first overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars. This is pretty standard at this point, but Trevor Lawrence, quarterback out of Clemson, goes first overall to Jacksonville.
Yeah, great intangibles. He's got everything you want out of an NFL quarterback. Really good arm, really good at reading his receivers, and great legs. So he's by far the best prospect in the entire draft, and that's why a team that needs a QB, the Jacksonville Jaguars, would take him at number one. I don't see them taking anyone else.
Yeah, this is pretty much a consensus pick. If the Jags go anywhere else with this one, I think everyone on the face of the earth that's a football fan would be absolutely shocked. This is the most NFL-ready quarterback in this class, and by far, like you said, the best prospect on the board. With the number 2 overall pick, we've got Zach Wilson out of BYU going to the New York Jets. We're repping the jerseys here tonight. We love this pick. We think that Zach Wilson is the second best quarterback in this draft class. We love what he's able to do as an improviser and his ability to make plays outside of the pocket. I think that this guy, with the proper talent around him, and going to somewhere like the Jets, maybe you want a fresh start from Sam Darnold, I think could really flourish and be a really good franchise quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's still a few things the Jets need to do on their offense to make it a little safer for Zach Wilson, maybe get a lineman later on. But I think that he is definitely the second best quarterback. He kind of reminds me of Josh Allen, and I'm hoping that if he is the guy with the Jets in our draft, that means that Sam Darnold could go to my Bears. You see, I got the Sam Darnold jersey here. I love Sam Darnold, so I really like Sam, but I think the playmaking of Zach Wilson would be much better for the Jets.
Yeah, at number 3 here, we've got the Miami Dolphins taking Penei Sewell, the offensive tackle out of Oregon. I think Penei Sewell, we had him as the second tackle off the board in our 1.0 mock draft. I think this is the guy with the highest ceiling at the offensive line position in this draft class. I don't necessarily think he's the most NFL-ready prospect, but in terms of athleticism, this guy's size, he has the ability to do it all, and I think going to that Brian Flores-led team, he has the coaches around him that can elevate him to his fullest potential as a player.
Yeah, I think that coaching staff is really good. We saw the Dolphins turn it around really quickly. I really like Brian Flores. Clearly, he's not the line coach, but I think he can enable some good linemen. Penei Sewell is probably the most athletic tackle, like you said, but I think his technique could improve, and I think it will improve. I think he's a really good clay to mold,
yes.
And I think he's going to be really good in the NFL.
At the number 4 pick, we've got our first trade of this mock draft. We've got the Carolina Panthers moving up with the Atlanta Falcons, swapping picks here, obviously some other compensation involved. But the Panthers now hold the number 4 pick in this mock draft, and they take Justin Fields out of Ohio State. Justin Fields we see as a little bit more of a raw prospect. He has all the tools in the box that he needs to be a franchise quarterback, but he is missing some key intangibles. He looks down his wide receivers a little bit, and he tends to lock onto targets and make some bad choices under pressure. So we think Justin Fields could be a superstar, and sending him to Carolina with that bridge quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater.
The Bridgewater quarterback. Yeah.
You've got yourself some room, and you don't have that urgency to start him right away. You can let him sit, develop, and learn some technique before he has to play in an actual game.
Yeah, unlike Lawrence and Wilson, I think that Fields needs to sit behind a seasoned quarterback first, because of those issues looking down receivers. I think he just needs to learn some of the culture of an NFL quarterback, because I think Teddy Bridgewater is a decent QB, especially to sit behind, because I do think he has good knowledge, but Fields has even more athleticism than Teddy Bridgewater does.
And more arm talent,
for
sure.
So I think that Fields sitting behind someone could end up being a really, really nice move for the Panthers.
At number 5, we got the Cincinnati Bengals taking Rashaan Slater, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. Slater was our first offensive tackle off the board in our 1.0 mock draft. Got some flack for it, but we're going to stick with Rashaan Slater. We think this guy is the most NFL-ready prospect at the offensive tackle position. His technique is fantastic, and he's locked up some of the college football's best in his time at Northwestern. I think that the Bengals are foolish to go to a different position besides helping that offensive line and protecting Joe Burrow, obviously because of the severity of that injury we saw last season. So Cincinnati, you need to go out and get Joe Burrow some help. Just take the best offensive lineman available on the board. In this mock, it's Rashaan Slater.
Yeah, I think Slater would take the place of Jonah Williams, and Williams would just switch to the right side, because I think Slater's already a better tackle. Clearly, we haven't seen him in the NFL, but I think he'll automatically, with that technique that he already has, he will be a piece to plug in at that left spot. So, really nice pick for Joe Burrow, really.
Really, yeah, for sure. At number 6 here, our second trade, we've got the San Francisco 49ers flipping places with the Philadelphia Eagles to come up and acquire Trey Lance, the quarterback out of North Dakota State. I really like Trey Lance. I think he could flourish with what Kyle Shanahan and that offensive repertoire has to offer him. I think Trey Lance has the potential to be a far more dynamic player, per se, than what we see out of Jimmy Garoppolo, who obviously took that team to the Super Bowl. The level of competition, the amount of playing time that we've seen Trey Lance have in his college career, a little bit concerning and some reason to raise some doubts about him. But I think just with him being a top quarterback prospect, teams are going to trade up. They're going to look to acquire that franchise guy. I think Trey Lance goes in the top 10.
Yeah, we're kind of going with realism, especially in this draft, because quarterbacks are going to go earlier. That means some other kind of players that teams may need are going to drop down, so be mindful of that. But Trey Lance, very good prospect. I mean, he could almost be that Colin Kaepernick replacement. He's got the feet. He has a big arm from what we've seen at NDSU, but I think that it's clearly a need for the 49ers. They need kind of that playmaker on their offense. Jimmy G is kind of just a distributor of the ball, but they've got some fun players on that team that Trey Lance would definitely be able to utilize.
For sure. At the number 7 pick here, we've got the Detroit Lions taking JaMarr Chase, our number 1 overall wide receiver on the board from LSU. JaMarr Chase was the second guy we had picked in our first mock draft, but he moves up and is the first wideout off the board in this mock draft 2.0. The Detroit Lions, I think a lot of Lions fans, if you're watching this video, we're probably hoping for quarterbacks, so stay tuned for future mock drafts. We just didn't have you guys trading up quite yet in this one, but we think that JaMarr Chase could be a huge help to this football team. Clearly in a rebuilding state, Jared Goff, probably not the long-term answer there, and I'm sure a lot of Lions fans don't want that, so at least get JaMarr on the field, get him developed and working in that offensive scheme, and we'll see where Dan Campbell can take that team.
Yeah, I'm curious, really, with Dan Campbell. I'm not sure if it's going to crash and burn or if he's got some kind of method to the madness. JaMarr Chase is the most NFL-ready wide receiver, in this draft. His route running is crisp. He's very physical. I think that it would be a good fit just with Jared Goff being kind of a distributor. I think JaMarr Chase will be the one making the plays on a ball that's decent. I mean, Jared Goff isn't bad. He can get the ball in good spots for his receivers. So I think that would be a good building piece for Detroit. Clearly, they're not sticking with Jared Goff. Like you said, quarterback was something that would also be a good pick for them. But it kind of slims out at the top there since they didn't trade up.
Right.
Next best would probably be Mac Jones. So
right.
I don't think it's valuable for them to take a QB at this spot.
Right. And then here at number 8, we've got the Atlanta Falcons. In that spot, they moved back with the Panthers moving up to take Justin Fields. So at the number 8 overall pick, Atlanta is going to take Gregory Rousseau, the edge out of Miami. He opted out, didn't play this season, but in his season in 2019, he was fantastic. And I think looking back at what he did in his sophomore season, this guy looks like he is destined to be the top pass rusher coming out of this class. He's got the physical profile, the analytical profile. His size and speed is very, very impressive. And I think that he can go out there and fill a huge need for the Falcons with Takk McKinley forcing his way out last season.
Yeah, Takk McKinley is an interesting character, and I think that it adds character to this team back to this defense with pass rushers such as Rousseau. I think that it's a big deal to get that pass rusher that we just haven't seen them have. And that team has a lot of needs, but I think it's just a really good value pick here.
Yeah.
Best player on the board for defense probably at this point. In terms of impact, right away.
Instant impact. They could really use some pass rush. That secondary was hurting last season. Add a pass rusher, you can shorten the time that those guys have to cover downfield. It's a win-win for the Falcons. At the number 9 pick, we've got the Denver Broncos taking Patrick Surtain, the cornerback out of Alabama. Surtain is my number 1 corner off the board. This team, they are under a defensive head coach with Vic Fangio. They have a big team need in the secondary, filling up those cornerback positions that have really weakened out since that no-fly zone Super Bowl run with Chris Harris and Aqib Talib. In our last mock draft, they took Caleb Farley. In this mock draft, they go for Patrick Surtain. They've got the pass rushers. Now it's time to improve that back end, and they should have a very solid defense.
Yeah, Vic Fangio used to be the defensive coordinator for the Bears, my favorite team. He hasn't had a lot to work with.
He has not, especially on the offensive side of the ball at quarterback.
With the Bears, he had some decent secondary. Callahan he brought over, who was pretty good this season, but I think they need clearly a little more from the cornerback position. So, best one available.
Yep, and they just actually released A.J. Boye as a last note here for the Broncos, so that even increases the need more. At number 10, we've got the Dallas Cowboys taking Caleb Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. This is simply just a flip-flop of how we had it in our mock draft 1.0. Dallas has a big need in the secondary as well. That defense as a whole was the weak spot of that football team, even when Dak Prescott was on the field. So go get yourself a corner, pair him with Trevon Diggs, and strengthen up that unit.
Yeah, some would say maybe a pass rusher would be another thing that they need, but I think corner is even more important because their pass defense was just really bad.
Yeah.
I think that they need it more because the pass rush won't have as much effect on those receivers that they have going against them. So I think that next best corner on the board, you got to take him there.
Yeah. Number 11 here, we've got the New York Football Giants taking Jalen Waddle, wide receiver out of Alabama. And I know a lot of you guys are thinking, before Devonta Smith, yes, we have Jalen Waddle ahead of Devonta Smith by a very slim margin in this particular mock draft. Not necessarily saying that reflects our overall views of the player, but we definitely view both of those players in a very high light. Don't kid yourself. These guys are both 1A and 1B talents, and it might honestly come down to a matter of scheme fit. I think Jalen Waddle mirrors what Odell Beckham Jr. did for this football team a couple years ago, and Odell was sensational for the Giants. Obviously a much lesser product on the field with the Cleveland Browns and that offensive system. Jalen Waddle's routes are so explosive and crisp, and he can fly down the field. I think if you give Daniel Jones another piece to work with, Darius Slayton is not a wide receiver 1. Put him into that second slot. Give Evan Ingram some more cushion to do his own work. And then Saquon Barkley returning. Add Jalen Waddle in on top of that. And you've got yourself a very versatile offense and a lot of moving pieces you can do things with. And that defense is already very solid. So I think that puts the Giants in a really good spot there.
Yeah, I think later in the draft they would probably get O-line. Here we take receiver because I think it makes a big impact for that team. I don't think the Giants are going to be that bad of a team, especially if they get a piece that would be so impactful, such a fast receiver with great route running that can just be a big playmaker, which is what they've been missing.
Yep. At number 12 here, we've got the Eagles in that trade with the 49ers where they ended up moving backwards, selecting Devonta Smith out of Alabama. So the Bama teammates go back-to-back here. This is the 4th Alabama wide receiver that we project to go in the last 2 years in the first round of a NFL draft. So obviously one heck of a recruitment class there for Alabama. But Devonta Smith here to the Eagles, I think this makes a lot of sense. They are talent depleted. Obviously, they wanted Jalen Reagor in the first round last year. That looks like a mistake right now after Justin Jefferson went afterwards. But I think Jalen Reagor can be a very solid wide receiver, too, for that football team. Deshaun Jackson, he's getting older. I think that Jalen Reagor can hope to kind of imitate that skill set that he brought to the table, bring Devonta Smith in as a more pure wide receiver one, and give Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz, whoever's back there at quarterback for that football team, give him the opportunity to have some talent to distribute the football to.
Yeah, he's a Heisman winner. He looked fantastic in college. We just don't know. So that size is really the biggest knock.
Right.
His route running is very good, especially for how fast he is. I think that Hurts would be very happy to have him, and I think that he'd work well with him.
Yep. At number 13 here, we've got another slight change up from the mock draft 1.0. Los Angeles Chargers still going online here with Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC. Elijah Vera Tucker is a very versatile offensive lineman. I think this fills a big team need for the Chargers. They've got talent all over the football field on both sides of the ball, but I think that offensive line down in the trenches could really use some work, whether it's improving that run game for Austin Eckler or protecting either side of Justin Herbert on the edge. I think this is a big move for this team to go out there and get some extra protection.
Yeah, it's the biggest glaring issue on a team that really has a lot of great players all around, like you said. So if they can address this, he can play inside and outside. So that opens up some opportunities for them to choose different free agents possibly, or draft even later for a tackle or a guard. So he can play both. So it gives you some room for him maybe just to end up playing tackle, or if you hit on a guard, he can, or if you hit on a tackle later on, he can play guard.
Slide into guard. Yep. A lot of versatility with Elijah Vera Tucker there. At number 14, we've got the Minnesota Vikings picking Christiandarasaw, who we had going to the Chargers in our first mock draft. Christiandarasaw out of Virginia Tech. Very, very big offensive lineman. Mm-hmm. This guy has a great skill set. I think he could turn out to be one of the best in this class. And there's a lot of good linemen in this draft class. Yep. The Vikings, huge team need is offensive tackle. Kirk Cousins has been getting sacked a ton. He's been under pressure and duress a lot during his time in Minnesota. The run game is very good. Their run block is very solid. But like I said, that pass pro, when Kirk's looking for some deeper drops, he's got a lot of pressure in his face, and he could use a healthy protector like Christiandarasaw.
Yeah, I mean, as a former offensive lineman, it's great to see all of these linemen in the first round, and it's because they're protecting the QB, who's the highest paid guy on the team generally. Yep. So a tackle like this is really big, and Kirk Cousins isn't that bad, and that passing offense is very good. So if you can protect him with a great a prospect like Darasaw, who I think is going to be an instant impact whichever team he goes to, here the Vikings, really, really good thing for their run game as well.
Here at number 15, one of my favorite picks of this mock draft, I've got the New England Patriots selecting Kaifpay, the edge rusher out of Michigan. Pass rusher is a huge need for the Patriots football team. Their defense, obviously Bill Belichick is a defensive-minded head coach. They could really use this. Their leading sack leader in 2019 was Chase Winovich with 5.5. They had 24 total team sacks. That's not going to get the job done. You need someone else to bring some heat from the other side, be able to move pieces around. If you can't rush the passer, you're probably not going to win very many football games. Let's be honest. It's one of the most important things on the defensive side of the ball. They had J.C. Jackson, absolute superstar, 9 interceptions last season, and they still were below 500. So Kaifpay fills a huge team need here. I love his talent and what he does. This is a great selection in my opinion.
Like you said, J.C. Jackson's getting all these picks. You add some pressure, not even sacks, just pressure. That's going to help the secondary even more, and that secondary is pretty dang good, even though it's a little older. I think that team needs to kind of change the culture. They need to get more of those big playmakers and less of the free agent guys that just fill a role. So I think Kaifpay is an exciting pick there.
Yeah, I love Pay to the Patriots. At number 16, we've got the Cardinals selecting J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. Patrick Peterson, the Cardinals organization, they've been talking about parting ways and agreeing to mutually do so over this offseason. So there's going to be a big glaring need at the defensive back position. They've obviously got some pretty darn good safety help, but in terms of cornerback play, Drake Kirkpatrick's kind of the next guy you're looking for. Otherwise, I believe they've got Byron Murphy
something like
not
that.
Byron Murphy. They have a younger talent in the secondary along with Budda Baker, but nonetheless, they still need some more help in that secondary. Was such a big piece of that organization for years leaving. J.C. Horn, I think, is an underrated prospect and a guy who can come out there and be that next guy who really helps Kyler Murray take that football team to the next level. So I like J.C. Horn here at 16.
Yeah, we have him as our third-ranked corner. I think that since it's just a big need for them, it's the just best guy available at that position, and it's the biggest need. So J.C. Horn has showed really nice things. I think he could end up being the number one guy there and being really nice in the league.
At number 17, we've got the Las Vegas Raiders selecting Micah Parsons out of Penn State. Micah Parsons kind of fell down the board a little bit in this mock draft, but that was mainly due to all the quarterback trades that we had going on. 4 quarterbacks going in the top 6.
We had him going to the Panthers in our last one at 8.
At number 8.
So we think that's a big need for them, and we really like Parsons. But here we have him a little lower, but big need for the Raiders as well. Last time we had Owusu Koromoa, who we really do think fits the Raiders. But when Micah Parsons falls this far, you gotta take him. So he's kind of the big part of the defense that they can center around, because that's really the big issue with that team, the defense, because their offense is actually pretty substantial. They really just lose games because of that defense.
Yeah, they need team defense to improve. Their offense is very efficient, very sound. They put up the points. They just need to be able to protect those leads. At number 18, we've got the Miami Dolphins taking one of my favorite wide receivers in this draft class, Rashad Bateman, the wide receiver out of Minnesota. I think this fits Tua's game perfectly. Rashad Bateman is such a solid route runner and a great catcher of the football. I think that while he might not have the most elite athletic profile, this guy, his technical ability is so sound and precise. I think that Tua is just a great field general in the making, who didn't necessarily have the pieces to work with that fit his game style in year one. And I think that really limited his production. So give him a guy like Bateman who fits the mold of the guy he likes to throw to, and find out really if Tua is the guy for that franchise.
Yeah, some of those receivers there are kind of just big red zone guys. Some have said that Rashad Bateman is like the Justin Jefferson of this class. He's kind of falling below the top 3 receivers, but he could end up being the most NFL-ready receiver in this draft. So I think that if he goes to a team like the Dolphins, that gives Tua a very reliable receiver that could basically carry the offense. It could just be that's the connection, and that really helps a young receiver develop.
100%. At number 19 here, we've got another big team need filled with the Washington football team selecting Kyle Pitts out of Florida. The Washington football team just needs offensive personnel that can make plays. And when we're talking about a guy in Logan Thomas who is dang near the age of 30 and had 110 targets last year, J.D. McKissick, a running back, had 80 receptions. They need someone else to handle the workload besides Terry McLaurin. They just need offensive talent infused into that football team. Kyle Pitts is the best available pass catcher on the board.
Yep. A lot of the receivers have already gone. Clearly, there's still good ones left. It's a very deep offensive class, to be honest. But Kyle Pitts kind of hits all of the marks there. He can play out wide. He can play in the slot. He can play at the tight end position. So I think that gives – it looks like Taylor Heinicke is going to be the QB, but – either way, any QB is going to enjoy having a pass catcher like Kyle Pitts.
At number 20 here, we've got the Chicago Bears taking Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from the Alabama Crimson Tide. Eric, you're a Chicago Bears fan. Why don't you give us the breakdown of Alex Leatherwood?
There's a lot of tackles in this draft that are really big. Maybe have some trouble with those speed rushers, but they have very sound technique. I think that since the Bears have such an issue with their O-line, we've got Bobby Massey at right tackle right now. He was injured this season. We had a lot of injuries on the line, but he's getting older and he's kind of struggling. So this would replace Massey. I think that he is a little bit of a raw talent. He looked pretty good in the Senior Bowl, but I think that the Bears would be happy taking probably the best tackle available at this point, and getting a big team need there out of the way.
At number 21, we've got the Colts taking Rondale Moore, the wide receiver out of Purdue. Rondale Moore, I think, outside the quarterback position, maybe wide receiver is the next glaring need on this Colts roster. T.Y. Hilton, their longtime franchise stud. He's a free agent, and we've both talked about this. We expect him to come back because of the immense amount of cap space that they've got there. But and for such a good football team, it's unusual to see that. But they don't have a big quarterback contract on the books, and they're still searching for a quarterback. Last mock draft, we had them taking Mac Jones. And in this mock draft, we'll explore the scenario that maybe they go out and trade for a quarterback or find one via the free agent market, so they don't have that needed for a quarterback in the draft anymore. Rondale Moore comes in. He's a deep threat. He can really do a lot of things, though. He's going to be a very productive wide receiver for this football team. I think that with how good the running game is there in Indianapolis, he's going to have some opportunities for shots downfield, and this guy could be a very explosive player for the Colts.
Yeah, I think the Colts offense needs a little bit of a spark plug. I think Jonathan Taylor is a very good player, but it's kind of that every down offense. But here, you've got you can throw a screen to him. You can just do those short slant routes. He will be dynamic on that offense, which is something that they're kind of missing.
Yeah, for sure. At number 22, the Tennessee Titans are going to take Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, the linebacker out of Notre Dame. We love this player. We talked about him in our mock draft last week, going to the Raiders, actually. This guy is just a downhill thumper. He absolutely nails running backs, wide receivers, whoever's in front of him. He can rush the passer. He's very versatile. He's very sound. I talked about this before, but my only knock on him is that he kind of tends to go for those big highlight reel, just throwing a shoulder and knocking somebody out. But he's going to miss some tackles in the NFL if he keeps doing that. The Titans, though, I think they need this guy on their team to kind of change the culture, bring a level of toughness that I think they're missing right now, and get that defense back on track where they can hold a lead when Derrick Henry runs the ball for 150
I believe
yards a game.
Vrabel, the head coach, was a middle linebacker for the New England Patriots. So maybe he can coach him up and teach him to have some discipline and tackle cleanly. But I think he's a great prospect, very athletic, and I think he could develop into a very good linebacker in the NFL.
At number 23, we've got the New York Jets selecting Wyatt Davis, the offensive lineman. Plays guard right now for Ohio State. I think this fills a big need for the Jets. Obviously, we had them picking Zach Wilson back at the number 2 overall spot, and they've got Mekhi Becton from the first round last year. Why not go out and get Wyatt Davis and maybe secure some offensive line talent for that run game and just keep solidifying that line, keep helping that offense progress and get better. Robert Saleh is a defensive-minded head coach, so maybe you just put the talent there for Wilson to work with and then just try and install your scheme with the defense you already have, which I would say is probably still the strength of this football team, even though they're not really good from top to bottom. So Wyatt Davis, I think he's a monster. I really like the way he plays the game, and I think that he can be a big-time player for a Jets team that really needs line help.
Yeah, I think he'd be a big piece on the line. And as early bandwagon Jets fans, I think that they could possibly get a tackle like Orlando Brown, who's trying to get on a team right now.
I would love to see that.
Yep, and then I just think that Orlando Brown would go in there, and then they'd have Wyatt Davis, and then even in the second round, they could get a guy like Etienne or one of the other running backs. We do not take a running back in the first round, but in that second round, they could end up getting a running back that's going to be able to have some holes.
A Javonte Williams.
Yes,
love to see the Jets.
We love him. Look him up right now. Okay,
yeah, highlight
look him
tape
up.
is awesome. At number 24, we've got the Pittsburgh Steelers selecting Sam Cosmi, the offensive tackle out of Texas. Cosmi might not be the most athletic guy. He's not the quickest out of his stance, but we're big fans of his technique, and we think that with a few years under his belt, we don't think he's an instant star when you plug him in on the field, but for a Steelers team that's getting a little bit older on all parts of the football field, I think you put this guy in, you teach him the system, you have him develop a little bit, and he could be a very, very strong tackle in the AFC North.
Yeah, like you said, sometimes tackles or linemen in general show up 3 years later after they're drafted. I think this could be the kind of guy who learns how to go against those speed rushers eventually. He's a little slower right now, but his technique is really good. So I think he's a very coachable player that would be a really big piece for the Steelers.
At number 25, you've got the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting Trayvon Merrick, the safety out of TCU. This guy, he's not necessarily the most flashy pick. He's not the most athletic guy, I would even say, but he is a very sound tackler. I think that this this guy could provide a very nice spark plug and safe, consistent piece to that defense. The Jags have a very young defensive unit, and I think Merrick could be inserted into that secondary, which is kind of hurting at safety right now. And he could be a guy that goes in there and maybe doesn't have the best rookie season, but maybe in his second or third year starts to really develop. And once Trevor Lawrence gets a hold of his NFL game, he can kind of elevate his game as well and really bring out the strengths of that defense.
I think he'll make a good amount of mistakes in his first year, even his first few years. And especially because that team still needs to get more pieces on the defense. But I think as he develops, and hopefully as the Jaguars put some more pieces around, he could end up solidifying his spot and becoming a safety that's a household name.
Yeah, I agree. He's got all the intangibles. He just kind of needs to put together. I think he needs a little bit more time to play.
Yeah, good tackler, and he is a ball hawk. I think he's a very well-rounded safety.
Yeah, I really like this pick, actually. At number 26, we've got the Cleveland Browns selecting Nick Bolton, the linebacker out of Mizzou. Nick Bolton is a guy who I think really helps this Cleveland defense and just provides an anchor for that team. They were really, really productive on the offensive side of the ball under Kevin Stefanski, and the one thing that kind of killed them was they gave up points after they'd scored them. And I think Nick Bolton, you put him in that defense, they're really in need of a guy there right now who can be that franchise player at the inside linebacker position. He can really survey the field. He can come up and make plays in the run game on first and second down and put this defense in a better spot to get off the field on third down when they would kind of get burned on those third and mediums, third and shorts, and give up big plays. So I think Nick Bolton helps this defense as a whole, and while they have some glaring needs in the secondary, I think he can almost kind of alleviate some of those problems at the same time.
Yeah, I think he helps in the pass and the run game, especially because they're not really known for either being a run stopper or a pass stopper. So I think that's the more overarching pick right there. You're covering the most. Maybe not a biggest impact in either one, but he's going to be a big piece, and it's a really big need for the Browns.
Yeah, he's like a big Band-Aid that can kind of stretch across multiple aspects of that team defense.
Nick Bolton, the big Band-Aid.
At number 27 here, the Baltimore Ravens. I really like this pick personally. Joseph Osai, the edge out of Texas. This guy has a lot of speed. He comes off the edge fast, and he'll get right in the quarterback's lap early and often. I think since the departure of Suggs and Zadarius Smith, these guys have been looking for someone to pair Judon with. I think that Osai could be that next player. He's, like I said, extremely fast. I think he can give some juice back to this defense and get them back to what they want to do.
Yeah, that defense needs a little bit of a revival. And so does their offense. They kind of disappointed us this season. Clearly they were a good team, but I don't think that it was enough. And I think that getting a speed rusher like this is different than having a Judon who's a little bigger, can run stop a little better than maybe Osai could. But those pressures on the QB could help out that decent secondary that they have, and that might just be Marlon Humphrey getting even more picks, being an even better corner when they have a guy pressuring the QB.
Yeah, Osai could be a huge spark plug for this defensive unit. At number 28, we've got the Saints picking Zaven Collins out of Tulsa. Collins is a guy who I think has a really complete game. I love his prospect profile, and I think he could be a star in the NFL. The Saints, I particularly think, are going to have a major wiping of that linebacker slate because of all the contracts they have to clear. Someone's going to have to go, and I think that Zaven Collins, with him probably being available at the back end of the first round potentially, I think that might make their choice easier with some other guys on the roster, and he could come out and be a big impact player.
Yeah, he may end up being a steal. He may end up being the best linebacker in this draft. I think that he's got the really good build. I think that the Saints are a good team for linebackers.
Yes.
It's just that they're going to lose these guys. So I think you put in a big piece there. Again, it's kind of like that Band-Aid. They have a big need. I think that their run stop is going to hurt. So I think that they get a middle linebacker here that can stop the run and the pass. It's a big deal.
At number 29, my Green Bay Packers take Terrace Marshall Jr., the wide receiver out of LSU. As a Packer fan, I love to see this pick. I'm a big Terrace Marshall fan. I love his game. And playing in that LSU system this year as the wide receiver one with JaMarr Chase opting out, I loved what I saw. But Terrace Marshall, I think, he definitely has some growing to do. I've seen some good glimpses of route running in his game. I would like to see him do it better on a consistent basis. But I think at this 29 spot, any offensive player you can get for Aaron Rodgers to get the football in their hands is a win for Green Bay.
I felt like they should have taken a receiver last year. Both of these classes are pretty deep at the receiver.
Too little, too late.
Yeah, it's really. I think that this would be a very valuable pick for the Packers. Again, another big receiver. They have a lot of big receivers on that team. But I think that he is a good prospect to develop, especially with a QB like Aaron Rodgers.
At number 30, we've got the Buffalo Bills selecting Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher out of Miami. Filled in for Gregory Rousseau at the edge position. Actually wore his number this year.
Yeah.
He played very well. He's a very explosive player. He's a spark plug. He's got high energy.
Got some attitude.
He does. I think he fills a great need for this Buffalo football team, though. They've got A.J. Epinesa coming in out of last year's draft class. They've got Ed Oliver there. Those are some guys on that D front I think can be very productive and really solidify the future for that Bills defense.
Yeah, I think it can kind of give that personality back to the Bills defense that we didn't see this year.
We didn't, really.
I think that it would be very fun to see him develop into one of those names. That it's exciting to see that pass rusher, and I think that it would help Epinesa a lot out too. Yeah. So it'd be a very fun young defensive front.
Yeah, number 31 here.
We gave you a little sneak peek.
We gave you a little sneak peek on accident there. The Kansas City Chiefs select Eric Stokes, the cornerback out of Georgia. The Chiefs they need to solidify that back end a little bit more. If they want to remain in perennial Super Bowl contention under Mahomes, they're going to have to look at teams like the Aaron Rodgers-led Packers and find out what went wrong for those teams. And a lot of times for Green Bay, it was letting the secondary get too thin, and that was a killer. We couldn't stop anything. You have to prevent that if you're the Chiefs. Do not make Mahomes catch up his entire career. It will ruin his potential. Rodgers won an early Super Bowl, hasn't been back in over a decade. So obviously Mahomes went to back-to-back. But that defense, the secondary in particular, they let Kendall Fuller walk last year.
Yep.
You got to revamp the talent into that unit. Bashad Breeland couldn't do it by himself against that Tampa offense. You have to help them in some way.
Kendall Fuller was a true number one. I don't know if Eric Stokes will be a number one, clearly not right away, but no. I think he could develop into a guy that is really helpful for such a strong Chiefs team. Breeland needs some help, so I think this is a very valuable pick here.
And then the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers here with the number 32 overall pick, a very big luxury selection, Azeez Ojulari, the edge out of Georgia. This one could just turn into a disaster for opposing teams. Azeez Ojulari is not going to have to play right away. They've already got JPP, they've got Shaq Barrett, they've got very good pass rushers there in Tampa Bay. Azeez can sit back, he can be in a rotation role on that defense, and Todd Bowles can coach this kid up and make him a very special prospect. I think he is very similar to Shaq Barrett in both body type and play style. Both very good pass rushers with some speed in their first step off the edge. This could be a move that makes Tampa Bay even more dangerous defensively next year.
Yeah, I really like developing a guy. Actually, Shaq Barrett was kind of one of those guys who developed behind Von Miller. So you see Shaq Barrett become the sensei to Azeez Ojulari possibly, JPP of course as well. Those are two premier pass rushers in the league, so I really like getting a guy that can develop under some veterans and possibly become a very, very strong pass rusher.
That was our NFL Mock Draft 2.0 for 2021. If you guys enjoyed today's video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And always remember to go check out that Patreon as well so you guys can get some exclusive fantasy football content and rookie player analysis. So thank you guys so much for watching. Thanks for tuning in and giving us your time today. We'll see you guys next time. Peace out.